Welcome back to the channel. In the last video, I talked about the deep state's modus operandi and the weaponry they so predictably deploy in the attempt to enslave our minds to their insidious agenda. Today, I wish to take a brief look at the current signs of the deep state's efforts to fulfill the plan that was devised in the event of banishment from our solar system. That is, after the Sayakawa and Nibu empires beat a hasty retreat, and then to afford the pockets of resistance left behind with a means of continued control over the minds of humanity. These pockets of resistance are clearly those that are driving the World Economic Forum's agenda and all its compliant government lackeys. I've already discussed the details behind the change in climate. However, this is the scientific premise put forward as a reason to accelerate the move toward a world government, and I consider it to be one of the prominent signs of the deep state action. The second sign is the war in Ukraine. This subject overshadows almost all other news in the media today. Unfortunately, it is only those who do objective research that will see through the thin layer of deception employed by the corrupt mainstream media, which still holds sway over the many who unfortunately just glibly trust in what can only be characterized as tainted news. I'm not going to elaborate on the deceptive presentation, the one that refers to a positive endorsement of the Ukrainian leadership, because this is just another of the deep state's ploys of applying lipstick to a pig's lips. I'll leave it up to the viewers of the channel to do their own research into the matter, and my suggestion is to consider both angles. That is, what the mainstream media and what the alternative news both are saying. It is very clear that the current US leadership and its NATO cronies are driving a war-motivated policy toward Russia. No matter what you think of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there are better alternatives available than putting the world at risk of a nuclear conflagration. Alternatives that will effectively expose the cogent truth behind the Russian intrusion. It's time that citizens of the world see through this deception. And while we agonize with the Ukrainian people, we cannot condone the West's fanatical support of the corrupt Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian people deserve so much better. I invite all viewers to visit the following two alternative news channels. I personally vouch for these as being the real news providers and suggest that media like CNN and CBC News be taken with a huge pinch of salt. The alternative channels can both be found on YouTube. The first one is Redacted, with Natalie and Clayton Morris as the news providers. And the second is Neil McCoy Ward. Both these news providers do a great job of presenting a clear picture of what's going on in the world today. A much clearer picture will become apparent when you compare mainstream media stooges with these alternative presenters. I spoke about the scientific and metaphysical principles of resonating with an unprovable hypothesis in one of my previous videos. And I believe that if anyone applies these principles, they'll experience that gut feel of knowing which of all these providers are telling the truth. Some are driving the minds of humanity to believe that war is the only way to obtain peace. Others are saying that peace cannot be achieved through an act of war, but only through a total abolition of war rhetoric. It is incumbent on all free-thinking humans to call on their political and military authorities to say, enough, no more war. I'm reminded of the popular 1960s song sung by a well-known singer-songwriter activist that expressed the theme of the ordinary man in the street not wanting a war, because the warmongers of his day were vocal about going to war against a foreign power. Daily now we are edging closer to World War III, which threatens the use of nuclear weapons. And this brings me to the main point in our talk today: the fear that this scenario is placing on the minds of humanity at this moment. Remember that fear is the deep state tactic used to control minds, and fear is an element we, who are evolving in consciousness, do not want to entertain in our thoughts, not for one moment. An explanation for the reason I say this requires me to take you back to certain events that took place during the Cold War between the US and the USSR. The details I'll give you should be personally researched by the viewers of this channel for their authenticity, but as a researcher, I know that these presentations are 100% true, and I can vouch for them. There were several accounts at the height of the Cold War in the 20th century that reveal the presence of UFOs, rendering missile facilities inoperable during times when the risk of a miscalculation or errant decision by an operator was at a very high level. The most well-known case is that of Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where 10 ICBM missiles with nuclear warheads were shot down by a single UFO, much to the chagrin of the US Air Force. The main narrative is the testimony of Robert Salas, a captain in the US Air Force in charge of the Silo base at the time. The Sun, a news media provider in the UK, ran the entire story, and you may check this out by using the website details on the screen. They also reported that former US defense officials have claimed that UFOs have invaded the airspace around many US nuclear sites. Yet another incident was authenticated on the testimony of First Lieutenant Frank Jacobs, who was in charge of a Minuteman missile test run photography at Big Sur, California in 1964. Following the test of a Minuteman missile launch, Lieutenant Jacobs made an amazing discovery when he scrutinized the contents of his video. A section of the frames showed a UFO approaching the missile, which was traveling at 8,000 miles per hour, and firing 4 beams of light at strategic intervals before it disappeared from view. The missile consequently tumbled out of the sky and was destroyed. Dr. Robert Jacobs is now a professor at the Bradley University in Illinois and participated in Dr. Stephen Greer's panel of whistleblowers, scientists, and contactees at the National Press Club, Washington, D.C. in 2001. So I would suggest, in the light of these missile-based interventions, that there's absolutely no chance of the Galactic Federation of Worlds allowing an all-out nuclear war, one that would destroy the Earth's atmosphere and basically all planetary life, to take place on their watch. Well, that's all we have time for today in this session of Spiritually Conscious Soul 101. But before we close, please remember to hit the like and the subscribe buttons, and should you like to make a comment, you can go to the website listed below and use the comment section, where there is a fillable form that can be utilized for that purpose. Thank you for watching my channel, and be sure to catch up with the latest material on the next viewing of Spiritually Conscious Soul 101.